Are more male Christians converting to Islam because of the influence that Andrew Tate has on the male masculinity culture in today's modern day age? Right, so today we're getting into this conversation, man. It has been a long time coming, and you guys know that Andrew Tate has been this representation of male masculinity. He's always been talking about it, as you guys will see over here, and then you will see over here that he is actually one that has been talking about this quite a lot, especially now recently with the Olympic Games that has passed, and how horrible was that opening ceremony. But with regards to that, you would see a lot of videos, as you guys know, and you watch Andrew Tate. For those of you that do follow him, you do know that Andrew Tate is Islamic and he is a Muslim, and so he does have this other persona of his. Apparently, a lot of people say that it is like a character that he's playing. A lot of people do not agree with it. And then there's some people that, are just like, he's just Andrew Tate. But Andrew Tate has come out and he's like, Andrew Tate. I don't do a very good impression about it. I don't really do a good impression of Andrew Tate, but he's always like, you need to. No, that sounds wrong. No, I'm not even going to attempt. I did attempt. I'm leaving it right there. But Andrew Tate is all about hitting the gym, being this male masculinity in the face of adversity and doing all this manly stuff, and that makes you a man. And he challenged the Christian community that as long as you are going to be doing... why do I sound like Wade Barrett from wrestling? Anyway, horrible. But anyway, he actually challenged the Christian community that the Christian community should not be lying down and just taking this, that there's time to fight and there's a time to stand up for our rights and all of those things. And yet our response is a response of love, a response that comes in the face of adversity through love, the same way that Jesus did, not being afraid of sharing the truth, not being afraid of correcting, not being afraid the same way that Paul did, but doing it through the lens and perspective of love. I think that's very important, and I think that's even how we should be dealing with situations, relationships in our own lives. And so, yeah, let's get into this conversation. We see over here that the question is posed to Cliff. Cliff is someone that's really good in the study of theology, and so he has a lot of conversations outdoors. He has a lot of conversations with various people from across cultures, religions, different spectrums of the world, and he just has conversations about the deity of Christ, about who God is, the Trinity, and it varies. You guys can go and check it out. But today there's just a short clip I want to share with you guys with regards to that, and I think it's really interesting because we get to see how Cliff actually responds to the question being posed because of Andrew Tate having such a huge following, and because of young men following him, they're actually converting to Islam. They're converting to Muslim. And with that being said, Cliff comes and he gives a reason as to why not to do that. I think it's really cool because it's not a place of judgment. He just says, look at this, compare it with that, and say which one, and see which one is more credible. Which one is more credible, right? And so he does exactly that. So he's on the PBD podcast and they're having a conversation about that. Patrick asks him the question and now he's going to respond. So let's look at what his response is, and I hope you guys got your stuff ready because we're going to be going into this. So let's check this out. Okay, let's go.
Behind it that we still haven't even figured out that's happening. I don't have the answer. That's what I'm wondering. You're always out there talking to people, so maybe you've had so many different questions that people have asked you that's forced you to do the research to get back and better and improving the arguments, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, let's go back to basic fundamentals. Say I'm undecided, okay, and I'm in a market. I'm watching Andrew Tate goes from being a Christian to being a Muslim, okay. And believe it or not, he's got a lot of influence with young men. So, hey, man, I love what this guy has to say. I agree with him. Why would a guy as great of a communicator as him and as many followers as he has, why would he become Muslim? I'm curious. I'm willing to bet he influenced a lot of other young men to also become Muslims. Cool. Let's put that there. Christianity, okay? Catholic. We can put these together, right? Judaism. You're seeing what's going on here. How do you differ? If you were to, in a very basic way, as a professor, as a pastor, what is the difference between being a Christian, between being a Jew, between being a Muslim?
All right. So Jews believe that Jesus was not the Messiah and was not a good prophet. And he obviously wasn't God. Muslims believe that Jesus was a very good prophet. And a typical devout Muslim has far more respect for Jesus than a typical...
Okay, just hold on there. So with regards to that, right, when we talk about the Jews that don't believe that Jesus wasn't a good prophet, till this day, actually, they still don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They still don't believe that the Messiah already came. And so their thoughts are that the Messiah still needs to come, that Jesus was a blasphemer, that he wanted to create this cult. When you go and search actually a little bit more deeper, you get to understand that in Judaism, that's exactly what they thought of Jesus. And so Jesus, seen in the sense and context of Judaism, he wasn't a really good person, if I can put it that way. And so, yeah, I just wanted to explain that with regards to that, because later on you'll see how this makes sense, because I'm going to bring in how Jesus actually claims to be God, and we know that he is God because Jesus is just cool that way. All right, so okay, let's go further. I just wanted to explain to you guys that
American, because a devout Muslim believes that Jesus was born of a virgin, lived a sinless life, and because he was such a good prophet, God would never allow him to die on a cross, so he took him to heaven. So the cross and the resurrection are wiped out, but a devout Muslim believes that Jesus is going to return a second time. So they believe in Jesus as a good prophet. Repeatedly in the Quran, Muhammad says Jesus is not God. But in the New Testament, the eyewitnesses who saw and heard Christ insisted Jesus claimed to be God by both his words and his actions. Mark chapter 2, he forgives the sins of a man who's Lord.
Okay, so I think it's fair to now note that he moves from Judaism, he goes to the Muslim religion or Islam, and then he goes and he mentions Christianity. But what do you see in Islam is that they do believe in Jesus, but they don't believe that Jesus is God. That is the pinnacle cornerstone of faith, and that is on Jesus, that Jesus died, that he rose again, that he is God, he forms part of the Godhead, he is the Son, yet he is still equal to God, right? And so that's the differences that we're going to start seeing as Cliff unpacks. And I think it's so cool the way that Cliff unpacks it, because you get to see the differences between them, that there are similarities, but there are differences. I think I heard a conversation with someone years ago, and they said that now they want to convert to being a Muslim because it's the same as Christianity. And that sat with me, and I was like, no, that's not the same, because the things that they're practicing in Islam is totally different, and the beliefs that they have to Christianity, yes, there might be similar characters, it doesn't mean that there's the same revelation thereof. And so I think that's important to note, that as you are navigating, if you're watching this and you're curious, I think it's important that you navigate those truths, the actual truths of what the religions actually do share. And that's what Cliff goes into. So let me not go any further.
On a mat from the ceiling, never even seen the guy before, and all the religious people say that's blasphemy. Only God can forgive sin. Yeah, by claiming to forgive the sin of that guy, Jesus is claiming to be God. And in John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham was born, I am.
Yeah.
And the Jews did not call God G-O-D, they called him I am, Yahweh.
I am.
And Jesus very intentionally took the name of the eternal pre-existent God, applied it to himself, and they picked up stones to stone him for blasphemy. So, you see, the basic issue is, who is Jesus? And Judaism, Islam, and Christianity disagree. Now, here's my problem with Islam. I have a lot of respect for the fact that one of the 5 pillars of Islam is give alms to the poor. I respect that. Obviously, Jesus taught that. I appreciate that Muhammad had a very high view of Jesus as a good prophet. But here's some of the problems with it. The miracle of Islam is not a person, it's a book, the Quran. In order to know that revelation, the clear revelation of God, the Quran, best, you have to learn Arabic. In other words, God is revealing himself in Arabic most clearly.
Okay.
The miracle of Christianity is not a book, it's not the Bible. It's Jesus Christ, the person who is God in human form.
Jesus.
So, am I going to be attracted to a religion that says Arabic, that's what you got to go? Or no, Jesus loves the world and gives him his life for everybody. Second difference is, Muhammad came with a sword. And let's be honest, it was not pretty for North Africa and for Europe what the Muslims did. And one of the largest churches in the 2nd and 3rd century was in Egypt.
Sure.
And that church got slaughtered. So Muhammad came with a sword. Jesus came with a towel. And he served people. And I am convinced that the reason that more people are followers of Christ.
Ooh, I like that. I think there's a lot of truth in that. And that right there should be able to give you like just the very nature of Jesus. Just the fact that Jesus didn't come to conquer the world with the sense of he's coming to kill people. Rather, Jesus came and Jesus died. He came and Jesus served. Rather, Jesus came and out of love laid down his life, which he says that he chooses to lay down his life. He chooses to bring his life back up. Like, Jesus just comes, and there's a total difference between the prophet of Islam and Jesus. So it's important that we note that we take note of that, because like Cliff mentions that Jesus comes and he comes to serve. And we see that those characteristics of Jesus kind of falls through the cracks. I think it's similar to how I started the conversation by when I said, Andrew Tate kind of has this notion that Christians just should be like violent and all of those things. And yet Jesus comes and you can still be assertive, you can still be firm, you can still stand tall, but also do it in love. I think that's the most important thing, is that we're not arrogant through the revelation by which God has given us, but that we share it in love, the correction in love, the rebuke in love, and allow Holy Spirit then to do what he needs to do in that person's heart and life. And then persecution will come. The Bible is clear. Jesus is clear. Persecution will come. People will persecute you for sharing the truth. People will call you names for sharing the truth. And so those things come with it. It doesn't mean that people won't be objective to you. It won't mean that people won't be like, they're going to say mean things to you, but they definitely, you can expect that. In other cases, others are more receptive to it. And so, yeah. Okay, we're getting to the end of the video, and then we're just going to end off. Guys, it's been good so far. I hope you're enjoying it so far.
Christ than any other religion is, because of his love, his serving, as well as his truth that he outlined very, very clearly.
Just said that.
So those are two of the reasons that I think it's very difficult to be intellectually honest and to go down the path of Islam, because there are some real contradictions. The third one is this. Muhammad was born in 570 AD, lived till about 632 AD. So obviously he never met Jesus. He insisted that Jesus never claimed to be God. Sorry, the eyewitnesses who saw Jesus, who heard Jesus, clearly wrote he claimed to be God. Now, who am I going to trust? Am I going to trust a guy who was born 570 years after the fact, who obviously never met Jesus? Or am I going to trust the eyewitnesses? Well, that's a no-brainer. Every single time I want to find out about any historical figure, I want to press the information back as far as I can, hopefully to the eyewitnesses. So Jesus clearly claimed to be God, which is a fundamental philosophical and religious mistake that Muhammad and the Quran are making when they deny the deity of Christ.
That was good. That was good. And yet you still get people, right, that would say that the Bible is not accurate, or the Bible, the historical facts of the Bible, they're not accurate because... Come on, you need to think about this and really consider it, because if you're saying to yourself, if Jesus died, rose again, ascended into heaven, Muhammad comes about 500 years plus after the fact, yet Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were walking with Jesus, pens down what happened, who are you going to believe? And yet there's so many contradictions on the other side, in the other camp, and yet they're calling our side inaccurate. They're calling our side the one that is corrupted. They're calling outside, and yet that revelation came, as they say, a revelation came 500 years after the fact that Jesus actually existed here. So there's a couple of verses I just want to share before we do close off. If ever you've had a doubt, in any form or way that Jesus is the resurrection. We do understand that Jesus did resurrect. We understand that that is what our faith is based upon. And without that, we will not be able to have this faith that we do stand on. And so it is important that we look at that. So let's look at this, right? In John 11:25-26, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Now, Jesus is at the house of Mary and Martha, and you know the story. Jesus is having a conversation there with them, and I like her response. And she goes as follows in verse 27. Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who is to come into the world, which is so cool. I think that is good. That is the first verse I want to share with you guys. Don't worry, I'm not going to be long. I'm just sharing these verses with you guys. Matthew 16 verse 6 says, don't be alarmed, he said. You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. And so that's the angel that's speaking over there while the women were at the tomb. And and the angel tells them, Jesus is not there. He has risen, right? Luke 24 verse 6-7. He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hand of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again, right? So we see that Jesus definitely did die. We see that Jesus definitely did rise again. All right. And so in 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 14, it says, for we believe that Jesus died and rose again. And so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. And so we see again, it comes through, and there's plenty more verses, right? One last one in Matthew 28 verse 5 and 6. It says, the angel said to the woman, do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay you. These are people that walked, except the 1 Thessalonians 4, but Paul did see Jesus though. But these are people that literally walked with Jesus. They were at the accounts of what happened, and so they come and they share. And so they come and they share with regards to what is happening and how Jesus did die, did resurrect, and all of the events happening that is stringed to that, right? And then with regards to Jesus actually being or claiming to be God, and I'm just going to show you guys a couple of verses with regards to that. We heard that even Cliff mentioned that Jesus says that he is the I am. And so he speaks about John 8:58 there. And he makes reference to where God says this in Exodus chapter 3 verse 14. And so we see that in John 8:58. Let me just read this for you. Very truly I tell you, Jesus answered, before Abraham I was, I am. Okay, before Abraham I was, I am. So he's saying that I am. That's what the Jewish people used to call God, and they still do. They call him the I am, right? They call him Yahweh, right? I am. So Jesus says he takes that label, he takes that title, and he puts it on himself, and he says that I am. Before Abraham was, I am. Right? And so I just want to share another verse with you guys. So I just want to share this. This is the one in Exodus 3 verse 14. God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Right? So we see that over there, God speaks about himself as I am. Jesus comes and speaks about himself, taking that and says, I am. Right, so we see that is one of the instances by which Jesus does claim, he does say that I am God. I am God, right? And then I want us to have a look really quickly at Matthew 11, verse 27. And guys, I'm just going to run through this so that you guys, we can have this done really quickly. Verse 27 says, Matthew 11 verse 27 says, all things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father. No one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. To reveal who? The Father. So by us getting to know the Son, we getting to see the revelation of the Father. That is powerful. That is powerful. And so we can see even over there, there's a correlation that the Son knows the Father knows the Son. And with us getting to know the Son, we get to know the Father. Jesus is that link in between them. And so we see that there is an equal between Jesus and between the Father. Okay, John 14 says this, verse 1. Or should I? Okay, yeah. John 14 says this, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. So Jesus is speaking here, right? And so he says, my Father's house has many rooms. If you were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You also know the way. You know the way to the place where I am going. And then it says in verse 5, Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we have the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. And so that is in correlation to the verse I just read previously, and we see by us getting to know the Son, which is Jesus, we get to know the Father, because the Son knows the Father and the Father knows the Son. And so with Jesus saying that he is the I am, he was before Abram, he was even in those times before Moses, right? Jesus was there. We get to see that Jesus is claiming to be God and that Jesus is God. We get to see that Jesus is God. And so there are a couple of verses here, but I want to close off with this one. And these are one of my favorite ones, and I hope you're going to enjoy this one as well. In Colossians 1, verse 15 to 20, we get to understand the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning of the firstborn among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile himself to all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. That is a beautiful summary. There's no need to explain more. If you are considering that maybe you're looking to switch lanes, do consider, pray carefully about it, and do have a look at this and wonder and think to yourself that is it worth it for me to follow someone because of what they represent, or is it worth it for me to follow Jesus because of the everlasting life that Jesus gives? This is not about what you represent. This is about where you end up with Jesus in the afterlife, after death, and ultimately where you would spend eternity. Guys, that's it. I'll see you soon.